Hey, sixth graders, this is Mr. McMahon. We're still talking about the Middle Ages. Today we're going to talk about one of the most important pieces of paper or contracts or documents in the history of democracies. It's called the Magna Carta. In this video, there's a few things I want you to know. Number one, note that Magna Carta limits the power of the king forever. Second, it decreases feudalism or weakens feudalism. Three, it forms England's or Europe's first democratically elected government republic called the English Parliament. And finally, there are several rights that all of us in here enjoy. Things like due process, trial by jury, and the rule of law. And all of these get the basis in what we call the Magna Carta. So we're going to do this, and we're going to go over about 10 minutes, and we're going to learn about what the Magna Carta was. So before we begin this lecture on the Magna Carta, what is some essential vocabulary that you're going to hear today? First one is absolute monarchy. This is a form of government in where a king or queen has all 100% of the power. Second, excommunicate. This is when a person who belongs to a church has been expelled from that church, which means they can no longer attend that church. Three, due process. This is a right where a citizen gets fair treatment in the court system, where someone must be first told the crime they've committed, second, be shown evidence of what they did wrong, and then third, in the court system, be treated fairly. Four, the rule of law, the idea that all people must follow the law. It is applied and enforced fairly for all people in a country or civilization. And then trial by jury. This is where a group of citizens, one's peers, decide court cases of that person's either guilty or innocent. Okay, this is standard 6.5.2 on the Magna Carta. South Carolina wants you to explain the effects of the Magna Carta on European society, how it affected the feudal system, and its contribution to development of England's representative government. So what are some objectives of today's lecture here? Hopefully by the end of this you will know how the Magna Carta changed European society. What I'm really concerned is, do you know some of the rights that people eventually got because of the Magna Carta? Second, how did the Magna Carta change feudalism? What changes that social hierarchy / government type system called feudalism? What does Magna Carta do to it? And third, England has representative government today called a parliament. And how did the Magna Carta eventually lead to England's current government called the English Parliament? So before we begin this lecture on the Magna Carta, what is some essential vocabulary that you're going to hear today? First one is absolute monarchy. This is a form of government in where a king or queen has all 100% of the power. Second, excommunicate. This is when a person who belongs to a church has been expelled from that church, which means they can no longer attend that church. Three, due process. This is a right where a citizen gets fair treatment in the court system, where someone must be first told the crime they've committed, second, be shown evidence of what they did wrong, and then third, in the court system, be treated fairly. Four, the rule of law, the idea that all people must follow the law. It is applied and enforced fairly for all people in a country or civilization. And then trial by jury. This is where a group of citizens, one's peers, decide court cases of that person's either guilty or innocent. So what is the Magna Carta? So Magna Carta, you'll see in this picture, this is King John being seated, and he is signing a document. His lords and nobles are surrounding him, and the document he is signing is what we call the Magna Carta. So it's a piece of paper, but it's a contract between the king and his nobles. So what does the Magna Carta do? Well, for King John and the power of the king, anyone after him, it decreases the power of the king. So the king will no longer have as much power as he did before the Magna Carta was signed. And also the Magna Carta eventually reached to England's Parliament. And you see this picture today. It looks something like our Congress. You have a bunch of legislators sitting around and they make laws. So this is England's form of representative government called their parliament. And here in our United States, we can trace back to some of our rights that are located in the Bill of Rights from the Magna Carta. And also, when the framers were putting together our Constitution that you studied in the fourth grade, many of the aspects of this come from the Magna Carta, some of the ideas. So that you would have used the Magna Carta as a reference for our Constitution. Okay, nation states in review. For a nation state, again, it's a self-governing country. It's got people the same common background, and there are three major ones that we look at during the Middle Ages. We got France, we got England, and we got Russia. And today we're going to focus on France and England here in the beginning. So William the Conqueror, not simply William, but William the Conqueror. So William the Conqueror, he is from France. He sails to England and he conquers England. And he is known as the first king of England, even though he's from France. That's kind of strange, but that's how it is. When he comes to England, he brings feudalism with him. Why not? It's such a great idea. So he is the king. He gives out feasts of land to lords and nobles that are allegiant to him. They give out feasts of land to vassals and knights to protect their land, and then they have serfs and peasants to work on their manors. So again, he brings feudalism, that idea, from France and brings it to England. Once feudalism is in England, the lords and nobles' power, they have less power because now William the Conqueror is the absolute monarch. He has all the power. He's at the top of the social pyramid here, feudalism. So lords and nobles lose some power once William the Conqueror takes over. So we get a monarchy, which is a system of government where one person rules, and it's usually called a king or a queen for a monarchy. So William the Conqueror is what we call an absolute monarch. So he has all the power. You'll notice that there's only one branch of government. He is the legislative power, the executive, the judicial, the military power. It's centralized, and he controls the church. So an absolute monarch controls all, or has all the power. You'll learn more about this in 7th grade when you study the Enlightenment. All right, so what about the absolute monarchy? What about the kings of England? Well, the kings of England would raise taxes without consenting with their nobles, and so they'd raise taxes. Also, they felt like they could take nobles' property without nobles agreeing to it. So with that absolute monarchy and have 100% of the power, they could take land when they wanted to, and they could raise taxes whenever they wanted to. Now the nobles and the lords didn't like this too much, so they were trying to come up with some ideas. How can we limit the king's power, and how can we protect our rights as nobles? How can we make sure that he or she is not raising taxes whenever they want, and how can we make sure we protect our rights so they're not stealing our land or other things where they abuse their power? Now we get King John of England. So you get some kings after William the Conqueror, and then we get King John of England. Now, King John of England, not a very good dude. He was tyrannical, obviously an absolute monarchy. He would raise taxes to fight losing wars. It's pretty bad that, first of all, you're raising taxes, but you do it to continually fight losing wars. He gets excommunicated or expelled from the church, so even the church thinks he's a bad guy. And he would remove archbishops from power, not the Pope, but he decided he could remove archbishops from the power. So King John was not a very well-liked dude. So the Magna Carta. The nobles finally have enough, and they give King John an ultimatum. A, fight us in a war, you'll probably lose. Or B, sign this Magna Carta, which will limit some of your power, but we won't have a war. So King John chooses option B. King John, you see here in the painting, sitting on the right, he's at Runnymede, and he's signing the Magna Carta. On the left and surrounding him, you'll see his nobles. They're watching him sign the Magna Carta. So what does the Magna Carta do? What are some things you find in it? First of all, the king must follow the law. He must follow his own laws. He's not above the law no more. He can't rule as he wishes. He must get approval from the nobles. The nobles can declare war on the king if he doesn't follow the Magna Carta. And the nobles set up what's called the Great Council, which is going to advise the king. So this is a painting of the Great Council. These are nobles who would advise the king. So when the king maybe wanted to go to war or raise taxes or some other decision, he would gather the nobles and he would get consent from them that he would be allowed to do what he wanted. So they would advise the king on what the king would be able to do. So what are some rights in the Magna Carta? Now, when we talk about these rights, first, these rights were only for the nobles and the lords. These did not apply to regular, everyday citizens. Now, in 2016, it does apply to every citizen, but in the beginning, the rights listed in the Magna Carta were only for the lords and nobles. So rights in the Magna Carta. Now, eventually, yes, English people get basic rights, but again, remember, in the beginning, it's just lords and nobles. On the bottom right, number 1, capital letters. It limits the power of the king. The king no longer has absolute power. Also, the king can't raise taxes without approval of the Great Council of Nobles. What about the rule of law? The rule of law states that nobody's above the law, so the king now must follow the law. Just like in our country, Governor Nikki Haley or President Obama, they're not above the law. They have to follow the law just like the rest of us. What about due process? People get due process, which means fair treatment in the court system. Fair treatment in the court system basically means that you cannot be imprisoned, you should not be arrested, you cannot be stripped of your rights, unless you go through a process of going to court, evidence shown against you, and then your peers decide that you should be punished. So due process basically means there should be a process or steps to show that you have broken the law and that you deserve to lose your rights. And then trial by jury. Instead of being decided whether we've done something right or wrong by the court system and by judges, we have the right to have a jury of our peers decide, did we break the law or not? So trial by jury. So what are some effects of the Magna Carta? What are some things that change? First of all, the Great Council eventually becomes English Parliament. The English Parliament is England's representative body. Today, these people are elected to office to make the laws for the country of England. English Parliament is basically England's elected representative government. These are representatives that are elected by the people. And it's the first democratically elected government in all of Europe. Feudalism. Well, feudalism, this is not good for feudalism. This weakens feudalism. It weakens its social hierarchy. So, the Crusades first kind of caused feudalism to weaken. Now we get the Magna Carta, which weakens it further. In a moment, we're going to study the bubonic plague, which is kind of the nail in the coffin for feudalism. And the United States Constitution. When our framers put together our Constitution, are some things that they got from the Magna Carta. Number 1, the rule of law. No one in the United States is above the law, whether you're the governor or president. We have a right to have a trial by our jury or by our peers to decide our guilty or innocence. And we all have the due process of law, that if we are charged with a crime, there must be a process that goes along that shows whether we're guilty or innocent. So these are some of the things that we find in our Constitution from the Magna Carta. So you just got done listening about the Magna Carta. There's kind of 4 things I want you to be able to tell me right now. Number 1, how does it change the power of the king? What becomes new because of the Magna Carta? 2, how does it affect feudalism? What changes to feudalism? 3, what becomes England's first democratically elected government? What is its name? And finally, what kind of rights do the people get because of the Magna Carta? So that was the Magna Carta presentation. Hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, see you later.